Hi, I'm Femi OK, and you're in the stream. Today, training the next generation's teachers. Amid a global teacher shortage, how can schools find and keep good educators? Our digital producer, Malika Bilal, has been sifting through our online community, a very well-educated online community.
Yeah, exactly.
What are they saying?
There's actually a lot of teachers, and they all have an answer to that question that you raised. Really strong feelings about this topic, but the most common demand is pay teachers better. So Alexander on Twitter writes to the stream, rationales for low teacher pay are tied to the belief that teaching is easy and not a profession like law or medicine. Now, whether you're a teacher or have ever been taught, that's all of you, join our conversation, #AJStream.
School teachers in many countries are known for being overworked, underpaid and underappreciated. So much so that many teachers have gone on strike to improve working conditions, while others choose to leave the profession altogether. And according to a UNESCO study last year, at least 93 nations faced a teacher shortage. That means that in almost half of the world's countries, not enough people are willing to pursue careers in education. Have a listen to what a few US teachers had to say about their jobs and the challenges they face.
I think I always had it in me to become a teacher, but I never wanted teacher pay.
We're underfunded, we have less resources, we're kind of expected to give up of our time. We're expected to go the extra mile all the time without being asked, even if I can.
You know, I think that it's as important to guide students through an education as it is to help someone in the hospital who's sick or uphold the law in a courtroom.
There is a certain amount of demonization of teachers that goes on, knowing how hard we work and knowing what's actually happening in a classroom. It's hard to hear people put down your profession.
In somebody's class is the next bioscientist. In somebody's class is the next discoverer. It's so important that we renegotiate what we think about teachers.
So what can be done to recruit and retain new educators? Joining us via Skype to talk about this in Seattle in the US, we have Jesse Hagopian. He's a high school teacher. In Vancouver, Canada, Toby Steves is a secondary school teacher. In Nairobi, Kenya, we have Lillian Wamoyo. She is an academic manager for Bridge International Academies. That's an education startup company with primary and nursery schools in Kenya. And in Lahore, Pakistan, Noor Abdallah is a second-year teaching fellow in the Teach for Pakistan program. So welcome, everybody. His students call him Mr. S. Hello, Toby.
Hi, Femi.
Why is it, when you hear about all of these challenges that teachers actually face around the world, why is it that you love being a teacher?
Well, I think it goes down to the relationships. It's really important, I think, when kids need someone, that teachers are there for them. Teachers are kind of the front line of defense if kids are depressed or if life circumstances are just really weighing them down. The majority of the people that they're going to touch base with first aren't their nurses or some random person that they're going to meet on the street. If the teacher is someone that has built a connection with them, then that's who they're going to turn to. So that's really why I'm in the profession. It's not in it for the income, that's for sure. It's a matter of the outcomes, the students' understandings.
Oh, nicely put. Let me show you a picture here. Let's go to class. Let's go to school with Noor. Noor, her kids call her Miss G. Noor, that very first day when you had to stand in front of a classroom of children and you were trying to reassure yourself, what am I doing here? What did you tell yourself? What were you doing there?
I think that I started teaching because I, wanted to do something. I mean, in Pakistan, everybody talks about what the problem with the country is, but nobody wants to fix anything. It's all about sitting around the dinner table and just bashing the government and bashing the system, but nobody does something about it. So for me, it was about taking that step and actually doing something concrete to change the fact that there was so much illiteracy, in the country, basically.
Well, Jesse, I want to go to you with that same theme on why you decided to go into this. But first, I want to read this tweet from a student. This is from Hira, and she writes, "The best teachers like Toddy Baseball." She links to her teacher, who's actually a high school English teacher in Alameda in the U.S. She says, "He believed in me, that's all." And that's really all it took. Are hearing sentiments like this what drives you?
Well, that does connect with my experience. I think the opportunity to connect with 150 students over the course of a day and build a relationship with them is really an exhilarating opportunity. It's an opportunity to understand someone as a full human being and to help them reach their greatest potential. There's really no better profession, no better way that someone could spend their time. And I'm really honored and lucky to get the opportunity to work with such incredible young people at Garfield High School every day.
Lillian?
Yeah.
I want you to be really candid right now. You have to tell us the absolute truth in front of the entire world, okay? In Kenya, how do people treat teachers? What's their attitude towards teachers?
In Kenya, the attitude of teacher is very positive. Teachers are really respected in the communities they work. They are highly respected by children and by by their fellow community members. So teachers are highly respected people. That's the truth of it.
See, Lillian, as you were saying that, Toby pulled a very an interesting face. Toby's face was like,
jealous.
huh?
Yes.
How's that possible? Respected?
I certainly wish it were the case that teachers in British Columbia were as respected as doctors or lawyers, or even more so. But in British Columbia, there is definitely a common theme about the greedy, the lazy teachers, the teachers who are just in it for more off time. It is definitely quite a challenge for us to move forward with a different vision of the professional lives of teachers. And that's something that we're working on really hard in British Columbia to try to do.
Toby, why do you think that is? Do people actually say that stuff to your face?
Absolutely, yes, they do. I think part of it goes back to the gender inequities in education. An overwhelming majority of teachers in British Columbia in public schools are female. And so I think that this kind of complements with other gender inequities that we have within our society. And it's just a lot easier for people to minimize the experiences of teachers instead of taking them as seriously as what they do their local sports team. If the Vancouver Canucks said that, we lack access to resources, then I'm sure that resources would be found so that they could practice hockey. But if teachers can't get access to the internet to teach their classes, then they're just lazy and they should find another way to deal with the problem.
Goodness, Toby, it's like you read the mind of this community member who tweeted us. This is Tori, and she says, "My brother is a teacher, and I see how hard he works, how much good he does, and how patronizing and disrespectful society is. Teaching is so difficult, and yet we all think that we could do it better." So Jesse, I'm sure that you must have had instances where people come to you and tell you what you should have done or what you could have done to get better results.
Well, I think I have an interesting perspective teaching here in the United States that takes from both of what the previous teachers have said, because I think there's an interesting contradiction in American society on the way that people view teachers. I think that parents really love the individual teachers that they have had an experience with. I think on the most part, studies show in the United States that if you ask a parent, how good is the quality of education that your kid has received, and what do you think of your child's teacher, the ratings are very high. And in fact, there is some respect. But if you ask that same parent, what's the quality of education in America, and what do you think of teachers generally in America, you will hear very disparaging comments. And I think that has a lot to do with a corporate media that's actually following the bidding of some of the world's wealthiest foundations people like the Bill Gates Foundation, the Eli Broad Foundation, Walmart. The Walmart family has poured so many millions of dollars into a war on public education and on the reputation of teachers. And so, when these narratives are getting recycled.
Let me just get this right for our international audience here. You're calling out major corporations for the bad reputations that teachers, you say, have in the US. It's about big corporations, not about teachers themselves.
Absolutely. It's about big business. And I think that there's this narrative that's been portrayed that the problem with public education in the United States is the quality of teachers. And if we could only make it easier to fire them, make their jobs more tenuous, tied to high stakes test scores, then we could have this panacea of wonderful education. And so people have heard that so many times that it has an impact on their view of the teaching profession, and they look down on public education and on teachers, but not on their own teacher, because they know that their kid has had an incredible experience with a teacher.
So that's just weird, though, isn't it? Your individual teacher is fine, but teachers in America are not so good. All right, so let me just move on a little bit. I have to show you this map by UNESCO. UNESCO did a prediction between now and the next 15 years. How much do we have to recruit in terms of teachers? Where are the shortages? Now, the deeper, darker blues you see are where there are the biggest shortages. So the US, in the next 15 years, it kind of needs 1.8 million teachers. Whoa, okay. And then we go down to here, India, it needs 3 million teachers in the next 15 years, by 2030. Let me just stop over here, Pakistan. We're looking at 552,000 teachers. There's a shortage there. Noor, for you, why do you think there is a shortage in Pakistan of teachers? Why don't more people want to do what you're doing?
I completely agree with what Toby said before about how teachers are not respected, and the fact that they don't get enough compensation, because in Pakistan there's a stigma attached to being a teacher. For example, if you don't have something to do, might as well teach, you know. That age-old saying, those who can't do, teach, you know, that kind of thing. And it's literally, you know, it undermines your work so much, because I know a lot of people who, you know, think of me and they say, oh my God, you went to University College London and now you're teaching in Pakistan. What's your problem? Like, what happened? And they don't understand that it's a choice that I made because I really wanted to do it, you know?
And when we ask that question of why are there shortages, like I said at the very top of the show, majority of tweets that we got are the shortages are because teachers aren't paid enough. So this is Betty. She writes in her own personal story saying, I once worked as an art teacher for a state school in Brazil, and I loved it, but I couldn't make a living. And Lillian, we also got a perspective out of Kenya. This is Nanu, who says Kenya's education system and curriculum need review to be on par with a changing economy and technology. So it's like criticism there. What are some of the challenges that teachers are facing where you are?
The challenges of teachers are overcrowded classes, because when you go to most of our primary schools, these are the elementary schools, you find that the number of pupils outmatch the number of teachers. And then again, another challenge is the resources in class.
Give us an example. What would be an overcrowded class? How many students to how many teachers, or how many students would a teacher typically have to teach?
One teacher for 80 plus pupils.
80?
Yes, 80 pupils.
That's a school.
That's a class.
Whoa! How is that possible, Lillian? How do you handle 80 students? What happens?
That's why I'm saying that's a challenge to teachers, because you find that
that's an understatement, Lillian. It's more than a challenge. How do you? All right, let's take you're taking a class. You have 80 students in your class. What do you do?
Well, you adapt and you deal with the situation that you're in, as bad as it is. But I don't think that you can reduce this dilemma to teachers' pay, although I think that's a really important part of the puzzle. As we're highlighting in this discussion, teachers' work workload issues are a significant part of this problem as well. And so it's not just that they're underpaid, it's also that these workload, the tasks are being added to teachers' work, which makes it really unmanageable and very stressful. And at the end of the day, teachers make a judgment, is this stress worth this pay?
Yeah.
And more of them are answering no, it's not. So I think it's a bigger dilemma than just paying teachers more, although I would absolutely agree that we do need to pay teachers a little bit better than what we currently are.
Sure. So
apart from payments,
yeah.
the quality is underestimated when you have a higher number of classes, and this is what is happening. So that's why when Bridge comes in, we are offering high quality education where the number of pupils are matched to the teacher.
So in a bridge class, how many kids would be in a bridge class?
A bridge class will have 40 pupils in a class.
It's the first time I found that 40 was actually, okay, that's doable. 40 is much better than 80. Miss G, what did you want to add? Go ahead, Miss G.
Oh, I just wanted to ask Toby, what kind of tasks were the teachers expected to be doing apart from, the teaching and the workload involved with teaching?
Well, there's obviously the attendance-related stuff. There's additional curriculum mandates that are imposed through the Ministry of Education. There's all the paperwork that's involved with developing individualized education plans for students if they are perhaps going to have access to any additional resourcing for students with special needs. Aboriginal students perhaps would have an individual education plan. So there's a great deal of extra paperwork that teachers are doing to try to get support for the kids that they've got, but that doesn't always lead anywhere. A lot of the paperwork, it just sits on someone's desk, and it certainly doesn't translate into additional supports for those kids that need it.
What's interesting?
That connects with my experience. I was, if I could jump in real quickly and say that, right now I'm actually just off the picket line where the teachers in Seattle are on strike right now. And one of the biggest issues, yes, we're asking for more pay in a city where the cost of living is skyrocketing, and we can't afford to pay rent or mortgage in the city we live in. But beyond the pay issue, the issues that are really motivating teachers is that the school district wants to lengthen the school day with no extra pay. And when you look at all of the extra work that goes into teaching, we're not just teachers, we're also counselors, right? We're also healthcare workers, and we have to provide all these different services for our students. And I think the workload issue really is the number one concern with the problems that educators have. At Garfield High School, counselors at the school have some 400 kids on their caseload, right? And we have 100 homeless students at our high school. So you're talking about a counselor who's trying to help kids find housing and deal with the trauma of not knowing where you're going to live the next day, and yet they have to try to manage 400 students at once, and it's just impossible to deliver the social and emotional supports that those kids need. And that's the type of workplace that burns people out, and I think contributes to the shortage of teachers.
Toby, you heard Jesse mention strikes, and that is one thing that our community wanted to talk about. So this is Nebula. She's tweeting in from Saudi Arabia, and she says, "We never went on strike because it's risky and we could lose our jobs forever, and students' education might get harmed, and that's not okay." And we saw a lot of tweets like that, but then there's also pushback. This is someone else who writes back saying, "I respect that opinion, but the teachers have no other means to get their dues without resorting to these strikes. No one listens to them." And Toby, I know that your own school district was taking part in one of the longest strikes in history last year, in your own school history last year. How do you weigh those two things when you're making that decision?
Well, teachers in BC have a long history of job action that does include strikes. Going all the way back to the early 1900s, one of the first real attempts to push the government, we went on strike. So we've just finished up our longest strike in our history, as you mentioned, last year. But if you go back a couple of years, we went on an illegal strike just for a few days. And that illegal strike, that the willingness of teachers in BC to do that, it inspired teachers in Chicago to go out on strike. And then after teachers in Chicago went on as a strike, then you've got teachers in Portland and in Seattle and across the United States and around the world who are now beginning to have conversations about how is it that we can reclaim our union from one that is cozy and in some ways complicit with some of these policies that are being pushed down, and reshape our union into one that is a social movement model of unionism. And in the BC, we've worked really hard to try to support this vision within our union. It's not easy, but we work really hard to do it.
Let me just go back to Lillian. Lillian has an incredible story where she had to fight her way into the education system. Every amazing achievement in Lillian's life has really been against the odds. So Lillian, when you look at other people who have the potential to do what you're doing, to be teachers, to help a new generation, what do you say to them if they're listening to this conversation and thinking, I don't think I want to be an educator. Why would I want to do that? I can't handle 80 children in a class. How would you make this an appealing profession for them?
I think the best thing in life is to change people's lives, and the only thing you can do is when you give education to young children, because this education will change their lives, will change their family's life, and that's why quality education with anyone who has passion to teach, regardless of their standards, but they have the passion to teach, they should be welcomed in classes so they can be able to give. They can be able to give to the young ones the best, because teaching is not just basically just the teaching profession, but teaching is a vocation. So anyone who has that calling, I would request all the governments to welcome these people in the teaching profession and let them teach so they can be able to touch these many lives.
No.
I totally agree with Lillian's point, and a lot of policymakers look at teaching as, it's leading to job prep, where we've got to get them into university. But in my view, teachers' work is the fuel with which futures are built or burned. And so if we're not resourcing teachers' work, then we're literally burning up futures. How many kids in my classroom could be astronauts, could figure out major answers to big issues that we're facing, but instead they're frustrated with an internet that doesn't work, or they're reading a history book from before the fall of the USSR. So I think there's this huge gap between what teachers actually do and how it is that policymakers resource that work.
I am learning so much, and so I want to play one more perspective from a teacher who answered Femi's question on how you encourage others to take up this task that you guys are taking up. This is Terry.
I think in order to encourage more people to become teachers, we need a paradigm shift. We need to recognize as a society that there's value in education, even if that value doesn't come in capitalistic terms of profit. If we could recognize that, we would be able to compensate teachers for their labor, for the work they do, the important work they do, and actually pay them enough to keep them in their jobs.
All right. Lots more to talk to our teachers about. We've got Jessie and Toby and Lillian and Noor. Jessie, you're on strike right now, so I'm not sure you're the best person to say, hey, this is a great profession. But despite the challenges, Jessie, what's your elevator pitch right now as you're sitting there on strike?
Well, first of all, I'd say the community that's been built on the picket line is absolutely incredible. To see the marching band come down the street and celebrate.
Jessie, what's your pitch? I'm running out of time here for the show. Why should someone be a teacher? They look at you, Jessie Hagopian, history teacher, and saying, he's on strike. Why should I be a teacher? Because
I think you can empower your students to solve the problems that they face in their community. We're told that education is about preparing somebody for a job, but I think that narrative really misses the fact that education can be about unlocking human potential. And when you see a child do that, it's incredible.
In Seattle, US, we also have Toby Steves, Lillian Wamoyo, and also Noor Abdullah. We're taking our educators online to stream.aljazeera.com. See you there. Thanks for watching, everybody. Hello, this is the opposite of detention. I have kept the teachers back, but it's for a good reason. So we have Jessie and Toby and Lillian and Noor. We're all talking about teacher shortages around the world, and also why would anyone want to become a teacher? Let me just head back here to Malika. What do you have, Malika?
Well, some people are casting doubt on the idea behind why there's a shortage, and if there's even a real shortage. This is one person who tweeted to the stream, and he's using the United States as his reference. He says, "I know dozens of my children's friends with teaching credentials that cannot get teaching jobs. Let's be real." And so he gets an answer from someone, and I see you all nodding. He gets an answer from someone on Twitter. This is Terry, and she says, "Well, I think in part this has to do with programs like Teach for America that recruit non-teachers who don't cost as much." And Teach for America is a program here in the US, and it has branches in other places where they take recent college graduates and they send them to schools after a brief training. And I know you're in a similar program, Noor. Do you feel like you were adequately trained and equipped to go into this classroom full of, young people looking up to you?
I feel like I was more trained than the teachers who are actually present in the classrooms at the moment.
Oh, fighting words.
I mean, I know how to classroom manage. I know how to lesson plan. I know that I need to do remediation. I know what, if I'm walking into a classroom with 50 kids, I know how to handle it, every single day. Whereas the teachers who actually teach in the classrooms, who don't have the trainings, they don't know how to motivate their students whatsoever. And there is a huge problem of student motivation in our classrooms. And because the teachers don't know how to classroom manage, there's a huge problem of corporal punishment in the classrooms as well. And Teach for Pakistan and all the Teach for Pakistan fellows have a strictly zero tolerance for corporal punishment. And we sometimes can't do anything. I mean, I've seen kids who've got marks on their faces because their teachers hit them so hard, and it's really hurtful, because I know that those teachers just do it because they're frustrated. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to handle 60 kids in 40 minutes.
No, is there a divide then between Teach for Pakistan teachers and then traditional teachers in Pakistan? Do you find that there is tension between those two different styles of teaching?
Well, because Teach for Pakistan is a very young organization, and at the moment we have actually lost funding. So it's going to close down. My year is the last year for the fellows. There's only a handful of Teach for Pakistan teachers, and they only work in Karachi and Lahore. For example, in Lahore, we've only got 15 teachers working so far in different schools, whereas we've got thousands of teachers in government schools and other places.
I wonder if I can jump in as someone who did the Teach for America program and try to make some comparisons. I actually began my teaching career in Washington, D.C., joining the Teach for America program. And when I joined it, I was told I was becoming part of the new civil rights movement to help disempowered children and disadvantaged children. But I had quite a different experience, I think. We only got 5 weeks of training, and I went into one of the most impoverished ghettos in the United States, just minutes from the White House, a completely segregated school system, 100% African American students. And what I found is that the teachers who were there actually knew far more about everything from classroom management to how to conduct discussions and really get into deep pedagogy that asked kids challenging questions and cultivated critical thinking. And I was completely foreign to this culture and this neighborhood and this school system. And it took me a long time to catch up. And in fact, I had to go back to school and earn my master's degree and my teaching credential before I even knew what I didn't know, right? I didn't know about how to differentiate instruction and portfolios and alternatives to high stakes testing. And so I actually have a deep criticism of Teach for America, because we wouldn't do a 5-week program be a doctor for America, right? Or a 5-week program to be lawyers for America. And I think it actually takes quite a long time to develop
I know
pedagogy.
I know Noor's going to jump in here, but isn't it about circumstances and resources and human resources, access to education? Noor, you take over. Go ahead.
The thing is that me with 5 weeks worth of training I've got 5 weeks worth of training, which is more training than any other teacher in the school that I teach in, you know? So, I mean, it's about different systems of education, if I could say that, because in Pakistan, the system of education is not as developed as the system of education in America. So, like there's no concept of lesson planning whatsoever. The teachers will come in, they will open the book, they will make a child read, and they will write down questions on the board and answers to them, and the children memorize them, and those same questions appear in their exams. So, I mean, there's a difference there, right? I mean, like, Jesse, do you agree?
Yeah, I see that difference. The problem for me with the Teach for America program is it's used to say that the regular educators are all deeply flawed, and if we could just bring in fresh college graduates, that will be a silver bullet to fix education.
All right, so let me just bring in Toby and Lillian, because I know you're dying to get in on this topic. Toby, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we can bring it back to a comment that Jesse made early on in this conversation, and that's with the war on teachers' work that is being pushed by corporate and industrial interests. And I think if you look at public school teachers who are educated in a more or less traditional way through universities and more or less traditional credentialing programs, and you can contrast it with the Teach For programs, which are a much more corporate model of what teachers' work looks like. And so that's where you get a lot more of the language about classroom management.
Yeah.
My students are not something that I need to manage, but a corporate executive would look at this problem as a problem of management. So I think that if we look at it as a division between public values and public interests and private interests, then I think that helps separate these two fields.
All right, and I'm just going to point out the obvious. We're talking about apples and oranges here. The US education system is nothing like the Pakistan education system, and so we're talking about two different issues here, different sets of resources, different sets of access to education. I know that's going to be obvious to you guests, not necessarily obvious to our audience. Now, Malika.
Yes, thank you. Well, Lillian, I'm going to go to you with this closing thought from community. This is from someone in rural Kenya. He sent us 5 different video comments, and he explained to us a story about how he was sent to a location to teach children, and he found them learning with their books really just underneath a tree. They didn't really have infrastructure. So he went to the government asking them to do something, and he says they never responded. So he went ahead and built the school himself. So that's a summary of his 5 video comments he sent to stream. But I'm going to share one of his tweets that he sent us. And this is his opinion. He says, pay teachers well, motivate them, create conducive working environment, and people will turn to teaching. So Lillian, this is part of your job, motivating teachers. How do you do that?
We motivate teachers by employing teachers from the community they come from. I think this is the highest motivation, because you find, let's say, people who work in the Teacher Service Commission, when you get a job, you can be posted in a community that is far away from your home. Despite the management giving you everything that you need, you'll not be motivated because you want to be close to your family. So the unique model of Bridge, what it has done, it recruits teachers from that community. And then the teachers become motivated because they are reaching out to their brothers, their sisters, their friends, their neighbors. So that becomes the greatest motivator. Because I believe sometimes monetary value cannot be your motivation, because today you can give them $100, tomorrow they want 200. So I think the greatest motivation is within, and that's what we try to inculcate in our teachers. With recruitment from the community, they're able to give back to their communities.
All right, I'm going to ask you guests just for a very short comment about this. When I asked you to define what a great teacher was, you were very good and snappy. So Lillian, when you explained the kind of attitude Kenyans had towards their teachers, I think everybody was slightly envious of the respect with which teachers are held in Kenya. Your colleagues even call you Madame, which I think is very indicative of that. So is there anywhere in the world where you're envious of the teachers? If you feel, oh, if only we could have that kind of teaching system here in Kenya, where would you say in the world that you're like, oh, this is what we would love to have? Anywhere?
I'm envious of that is Bridge, and that's why I'm in Bridge, because whatever Bridge is doing is excellent. I wish our government.
Okay, 10
can
out of
just
10 there for loyalty. Thank you, Madame Lillian.
It's not about loyalty, seriously. The use of guidelines, it gives the teachers time to work with the pupils.
Yes.
Not only giving them knowledge, but also to deal with the emotional needs. Especially we work in informal environment where the pupils have different needs.
All right.
So you find, like, by the teacher guidelines that is being the classroom management skills
Madam
that
Lillian,
are not very
it
common.
was just a very brief comment. I think we get your point. Thank you very much. Miss G.
If I might.
Yeah, Miss G, I'll come to you in a moment, Toby. Miss G, anywhere in the world where you're envious of the teachers, the teaching system, the education system, or are you happy where you are?
Lots of places, really. I mean, I would love to, be in Toby's shoes or in Jesse's shoes. I would love to have electricity in my classroom.
Aha! Yes, see, this is important. This is what we're talking about here. Toby, what did you want to say?
I think the one thing that really hasn't come out of this conversation for teachers is that we've got to have some sense of solidarity. The struggles that teachers are facing in Pakistan and in Seattle and in British Columbia and in Kenya and on down the line, they are not unique to where those teachers are. This is a global, very complicated and very messy dilemma that public education is in. And I think it's really important for public school teachers to engage in acts of solidarity with other teachers in other places.
I feel that solidarity, Toby, and I'm
right.
wrapping you up because we're out of time, and the internet, even our internet, is going to get cut off because we only have so much online. Jesse, final thought is what?
Yes, that I agree with Toby. International solidarity between teachers is incredible. And I just want to say that Toby's struggle and his strike of teachers in British Columbia were part of the inspiration for our strike for the schools that Seattle children deserve. And so us sharing lessons about what we need to struggle for and how to struggle for it, I think is going to improve public education the world over. The corporate reformers are working internationally to try to make high stakes testing the standard of education and to privatize our schools the world over. And we need to also share strategies as well as educators on the ground in the classroom who actually know what our kids need.
Jesse and Toby and Lillian and Noor, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Take care.